Okay, testing. All right, it looks like the audio is okay. Wait for the online light to come on. Hello, okay. I think that should be live. Just gotta double check to make sure that the YouTube channel is registering it. Looks like. All right, so welcome. Good morning, or I guess good afternoon or nighttime for you. It is Saturday morning for me here in Tokyo, and you may hear it in my voice. I'm not really a morning person, so it may take me a little bit to warm up. But I figured this would be Friday night for most of my viewers, so I figured this would be a good time to try to start doing some live events. Possibly, I'm gonna try to do this maybe once a week, in addition to releasing smaller videos in between. Haven't decided yet if I'm gonna do that during a weekday or just another day on the weekend or something. But we'll figure that out later. But for the most part, the reason why I wanted to do this is because I don't know if I've ever said it specifically on my channel, but my sort of vision or the way that I've kind of been approaching my videos lately, this this live event button is in the way of my new layer button on my. Hold on 1 second. Let's see if I can just turn that off. Am I still live? Yes, I am. Okay, cool. Sorry, I needed to do some technical stuff for a moment. But so I had this general vision of the site that, or the channel rather, that I would be basically covering a kind of trifecta of three different areas. I'm just gonna be drawing over my document right now, where I have basically we have Japan is like one topic that I talk about a lot, and then we have like art, and then we have games or gaming in general. And the kind of way that evolved is that when I first started doing YouTube, I was talking about my life in Japan. So I was doing my Japan Quest videos, right? And can I get this girl to disappear for a second? There we go. Yeah. So we had the Japan Quest videos. And then after the Japan Quest videos, that kind of led into me studying manga at the manga school in Japan. So that kind of moves us over toward the art area, because now we're combining Japan and art, kind of makes manga, right? And that kind of led naturally to art tutorials, you know. But then, after going to manga school for a while, eventually I switched majors, so that no longer was I doing a manga major, but I switched to game design. And so now here in between games and art, we have game design. And so that kind of naturally led toward my life in Japan as a game designer, and then kind of talking about games in general. So it seems like I have this kind of triforce going on of like Japan, art, and games. Now, for the most part, that seemed to be a valid kind of a way to think about my channel for the most part, but I've noticed that lately it's been harder and harder to do the kind of the art and art tutorials area of the channel, mostly because when I first started the channel, I was oh, hey, Thomas Savage. Oh, and Caesar. Nice. Hey to you too. I was talking to you before we actually went live. Good to see you guys. But where was I? Yep. So the art area. When I first started my channel, I was a art student, or I was in manga school or whatever. So anything that I worked on during the day, I could basically put that on my channel, and there was no issue. I had plenty of material to talk about. Unfortunately, now that I work full time in a game studio, I'm doing art every day, 8 hours a day for my full time job, and unfortunately, pretty much everything I work on is under an NDA. And if you're not familiar with NDA, that means non disclosure agreement, which means that I'm doing a bunch of art, but I can't talk about any of it, which makes it really hard for me to talk about art on my channel, because everything I'm working on I can't really mention or even show. So I figured one way I could kind of start bringing art back into the channel is doing this sort of this art stream, and that's sort of my idea that I'm going to run with for right now. So the basic idea that I have right now is we'll start off with just whatever I'm working on. This is personal work, so it's not related to my actual job at all. And this is something that I had left over. I think I was going to do a tutorial about how to do coloring with this girl, but then I ended up doing a different illustration instead. So for today, I think I'm going to go ahead and just start coloring her. And I think getting set up and getting into the zone of doing my art, I'm going to have to kind of focus a little bit about what I'm doing. But once I start painting, you get into like this render mode, and then I want to do just sort of like a render chat sort of segment where I'll check your comments, any questions you have while I'm drawing. I could just talk kind of freely while we're doing that. So let me see if I can get this set up real quick. Um, you probably can't see my layers in the stream. If you want to see the layers, let me know and I'll adjust that. But for now, we'll just keep it as is. Um, the way that I've kind of broken this up is I had this kind of rough drawing right here where I kind of just roughly sketched in. See if I have it broken up. So yeah, here I have like the rough sketch of her face with the body here, and then I added a closed layer on top of that, and I think I have a guide layer here too. I don't know. Most people probably don't do this, but when I'm doing the anime style characters, I found that it's really kind of, I don't know, finicky, or like they're very specific about the kind of the proportions, where even if you draw a perfectly good anime eye, if like the eye is slightly too small, or slightly like the position is a little bit off, um, in outside of Japan it's no problem, but inside Japan, the people who view art here, or the people who are playing games or whatnot, they'll see it and it just won't look right to them. So I always had to like add this sort of like guide here so that I know exactly where I want the eyes and everything to be, and I do a lot of like repositioning after I draw it. So it actually takes me a lot longer to do these faces than it would to do just a regular face, because I have to be a lot more particular about it. But so that's the rough. On top of the rough, then I have this. I just basically did a line art drawing of it, and then when I wanted to do the coloring underneath that, I made another version of it where I made each. How do I describe this? I'm gonna delete it all real quick so that we can start from the beginning. All right, so I did I did it in layers of how I wanted the colors to work. So the first thing we have is that we have the back of her, the very back layer. I have just her hair, and that's going to be the hair in the back of her face, right? And then above that, now we have the body here, and then notice that her forearms are going to be overlapping with her body. So I made those onto a separate layer, and so then that's that forearm, and now there's her face. And this is another thing I do a lot because of the thing I mentioned earlier about the positionings having to be just right. Is I usually have the outline of the face and the actual parts of the face, like the eyes, mouth, and everything, as separate layers, because that allows me to kind of look at it afterwards and be like, oh, this isn't quite positioned right. So I could go and just kind of like take the eyes or whatever and just move it around to get the right positioning. Same thing with the inner pupils, I guess you call them. Yep. And then the front hair. So the only reason why I really do that is because you don't have to. You could just have it all in one outline layer is fine. But this makes it a little bit easier for if I want to experiment with the colors. And when I'm doing the coloring, I don't have to worry about being directly inside the line per se. I can have things overlapping very easily. So it just makes it a little bit easier if when you're doing the coloring. And if you have a pretty good computer that you don't have to worry about the speed of your computer slowing down because you have too many layers, it's worth just using the extra layers. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to go through to all those separate sections that I mentioned earlier, and I'm going to fill those in with some colors. I haven't really decided what colors I want to do. Like you'll see here with her clothes, I kind of took some inspiration from my Guild Wars 2 character that I was playing back in the day. So this is like the outfit of my level 80 Necromancer. I don't know if any of you guys have played Guild Wars 2, but that was pretty fun back in the day. I haven't played it so much lately, but and then her hair. I don't know what color her hair should be. If you guys have any suggestions, let me know. I haven't really decided anything. For now, maybe like a purple like that might be good. And I can always switch the color later if I need to. So let's see. Can I lock this layer? Yeah, be patient with me because I work in an office all the time. So now that at home I don't have the exact same setup. So it's going to take me a minute to figure out how to do things on a different setup. Where's my lock button? Oh, here it is. Okay, there we go. All right. So what layer is this? I think that should be her hair, right? Okay. Actually, I kind of had an orange there before, so maybe I'll stick to the orange color for now. Although if I don't know. I think maybe I'm gonna stick. Yeah, I'm gonna do the purplish. There we go. That worked. It's a little too saturated. Something like that. So right now I'm just gonna get the base colors. So it's you want the mid-range in between your highlights and your darks. Yeah, that's pretty good. Okay. And the next layer is her body. So that's gonna be just your standard light that's not light enough. Let's see, something like, now it's getting too yellow. That's close, still a little too dark though. Yeah, I think that would probably work. Okay, what's our next layer? Hands. Yeah, I think the hands will just put that the same color. And face, same color again. This is kind of my workflow. I just start from the bottom layer and then move up, doing one thing to each layer, rather than doing like everything. Like, instead of fully coloring each layer by itself and then moving on to the next layer, I find that it tends to speed up my process if I do one thing to each layer, then go back and do the next thing to each layer. May not follow that completely when I start doing like shading, but for the initial simple things. All right, okay, that's your hair. So let's make that the same color as the back hair. There we go. All right, that'll work. And so next off, we'll have to put the matte colors for the in-between elements. So the hair should be fine, but we notice here with the body, there's a lot of other colors that should be there. So we're gonna have to make another layer, and I'm gonna make that layer clipping. I'm gonna clip it to the layer beneath it. And let's see, what color should we make her clothes? This purple looks pretty good, but then that's kind of not gonna follow the same. Yeah, if that's purple, then her hair shouldn't be purple. So, yeah, I think I'm changing my mind. I'm gonna make her clothes purple then, and I'm probably gonna change the color of her hair then. Just gonna put that down real quick so as a mental note. That's probably about the right color. Okay, now I'm gonna go switch her hair real quick. Green, not so much. Let's see. So I'm just using the what do you call it? Control U. You could like change the color and saturation. I believe it's the same shortcut for Clip Studio and for Photoshop. What color is good? Yeah, okay, red. We'll do a reddish orange. So what have you guys been up to? Are you all working on art? Or do you play video games? Have any goals for the future? Looks pretty good. Yeah, okay, I like that color better. All right, so now back to her clothes. Now, let's see. It could, I don't know if you guys have used Clip Studio Pro, but one thing that's kind of cool about it is you could have this, the fill tool. I believe with Photoshop, I don't know if they've changed it in future versions, but you have to actually tap for each area, like one by one. But with Clip Studio, and you may already be aware of this, you could actually just hold down and like drag it through everything you want to fill, and it'll fill it all up for you. So it's a lot faster. Didn't want to fill her leg there. There we go. All right. This area. Actually, I think maybe this too. I'm gonna go ahead and just fill in all the colors, and then I'll put another color on top of it to to distinguish different areas of the clothes later. Is that her thumb? No, I think that's her clothes. Okay. Boots will be a different layer. So this is the thing that you kind of have to look out for when you're working professionally. I think for the most part, if it's just personal work and you're just showing on a website or something, coloring like this is fine. But when I was working at work, a lot of times what would end up happening is, see, it looks good like this, but then when you would take the line art away, you'll notice that there's little kind of artifacts left over. So a lot of times I'd like to actually just turn off the outline for a second and fill in any of those artifacts. And that's odd. For some reason, apparently my fill tool wasn't filling at 100%. See, this is what happens when you switch your setups. Is this not set up to fill 100% opacity? Oh, it was 97% opacity. Okay. So that's why when I just tried to draw right now, I don't know if you could tell, but there's like a slight difference in the color. And that's generally not what we want. So how can I fix that? I'll go ahead and select the color that's on there. There we go. So just change the color a little bit. Yeah, Caesar was mentioning before we went live that apparently they haven't been seeing any of my videos lately. And I was kind of worried about that because I've been actually trying to be more on top of it, and I've been trying to put a video up every week. But I've been noticing just in my feed for people that I'm subscribed to that if I don't click on them like every other day, it seems like that just kind of drops off of my feed. And I was kind of worried the same thing was happening to my channel. And I don't know, it's because there's been a lot of changes with the way that the algorithms work lately, so I'm not sure how to fix that. But you know, I mean, people say you should like click the bell option or whatever, but I don't think that even really does a whole lot. It's like the bell. I don't know. It seems like even the bell has different options about how much it will show or not show the video. And also when I did the bell, I think what it does is it starts giving you like forced announcements from like on your phone. It will like pop up, or like in the lower right hand corner of your screen in Windows, it will say like, oh, there's a video, and I don't want, that's kind of, I don't know. I'm the type of person that I don't want like a pop-up announcement. I just want that when I log on to YouTube that it's there. That's the simple way I would like it to work. But so I don't know. Hey Mike, how you doing? Generally interested in learning Japanese. That Benkyokai video. Oh yeah, so the Benkyokai. So I mentioned in that video that the next video I was gonna start teaching hiragana and katakana, like basic Japanese writing systems. And I actually recorded another video for that, where I was gonna just teach like a, e, u, a, o, like just the basics, letters there. But I made the video, and then I realized like the thing is to learn those. It's really brute. It's like a root memorization. You just have to kind of like keep practicing it over and over again. And I didn't want to do a video where I'm like, okay, now practice writing, and I'll wait here for 3 seconds while you do that, and okay, now try writing this and stuff. And so I was trying to figure out what would be the most engaging way to do it. And actually, maybe I could show you right now. So this is kind of separate from what we were planned to do. But my solution is what I'm trying to do, and this is why I've kind of delayed the continuation of that video. Is can I switch the scene in my thing? Hold on 1 second. I just have to take care of some technical thing to be able to show you. Let's add a new scene, and we'll make it the Unity scene. So instead of I may still do the video just like introducing the writing system, But I think to help you actually learn it, the best solution I came up with is that you need something like a flashcards. You need to just have things like coming up and like and being able to practice the reading it. And I happened to actually just see. Oh, I didn't want to switch scenes yet. Hold on. Go back to the other one. All right. Okay. 1 second. Yep. So, I happen to have actually. Oh, hey, Nick from Taiwan. Good to have you. So we're talking right now. I'm gonna do. I'm gonna get back to art, but Michael Richard just mentioned the hiragana or learning Japanese, and he's saying it'd be cool to have a phonetic cues. So my solution to that problem was that I decided that I'm just going to program a very small, simple game for you. And let me see if I can actually show this. Let's see, our Unity scene. Uh, we'll add a window capture, I think. Let's see, our Unity. I'm not the most experienced in live streams, as you may be able to tell, but hopefully I will get better. Here we go, Unity. All right, cool. So hopefully you can see that now. So this is a prototype. So don't judge the art or anything. Like literally when I'm making prototypes, I just take like like generic like symbols and things, and I use them in play as placeholders. What I just hopefully this won't have any bugs. Let's see what we'll play. So yeah, this is what I'm working on. See, I don't know if you can see in the lower left-hand corner, the middle kind of arrow, that's the placeholder for the main character. And the idea is that I'm going to call the game Kana Katana. And you're going to be like this kind of like samurai, like very, it's going to be a very simple art, but you have like a little samurai character in the middle, and you'll have like the kana coming from the left and right, and you have to type it in order to cut them down. So there's no animation or anything in it right now. I wasn't actually planning to show it quite yet, but you'll see here on the left hand side it has so I type E and it goes and cuts it. Ku, that'll cut that, and then that should come from the right side. E, so another one gonna come. Ko, Ka, and obviously I could read these probably a little bit faster than you would be able to at the beginning, but I'm gonna actually program it so that there's going to be a list of all the kana going from like from the beginning to the end, and so at the beginning of the game it will take from the top of the list, so you'll get like the very first kana is like the a e u a o, and then each kana I want to have actual hit points to those kana, so that if you cut it once it will lose 1 hit point, and then if you yeah, you notice there's no end to the thing right here, so it's still in process, but and also I don't take any damage when they hit me. In the end, you actually would take damage. But so when every time you cut it down, it will make it less likely to show up the next time. And so once you've gotten the kana at the top of the list kind of down pretty well, those will stop showing up, and then it will start pulling from the kana below that. So that way the game will naturally get more difficult the more you play it. And the goal would be to eventually get to the point where you can play through all of the kana, and then maybe I'll have it programmed so that if there's no kana left to come out on the list, then they will say that you completed the game and you know all your kana now or something. I don't know. We'll figure that out as it goes. But that's what I'm working on, and once I have this a little bit more presentable, I'll do an actual video where I show exactly what this is going to be. But yep, so that's what's going on there. Let me see if I can go back to the art side. Steam. Clip Studio VO. All right, so back to that. So that is why my teaching you Japanese videos have been a little bit delayed. I wanted to kind of get that there because I think once you learn the writing system, that's gonna make it a lot easier to get into more interesting stuff. And the writing system, it is very much just brute memorization. It's not, I mean, there are sites that give you tricks about try to imagine it looks like this or like that. Like, I think my friend, he was trying to learn it, and I remember the kanji for she. It's can I make this visible? Here? There we go. No. There we go. Yeah, like this is the kana for she. My friend, he would look at that and it's like, oh, it's like a woman's hair, and that's why it's she, you know. And so I mean, there are like kind of those mnemonic devices, but for me, when I was learning, I didn't really do those. For me, it was just like brute memorization. So I don't know. We'll figure out exactly how we want to approach that later, but that's the gist of that. Okay, where was I? So I have her the basic color for her clothes, and I'm gonna make another layer on top of that to kind of make some different clothing elements. this is throwing me off so much because I don't know if you can't see the layers, but for some reason the way that Clip Studio Pro works at my office, it has the new layer button at the bottom of the screen, and for some reason here it's on the top. I don't know how I change that, and but I'll work on that later. So, but every time I kind of pause, it's because I'm looking for the button and it's not there. I'm like, what? Where is it? It's supposed to be there. Okay. So, what color should we use to kind of counter this to complement this kind of bluish color? So, I'm assuming a lot of you probably already know about complementary colors. You just go to the opposite side of the color wheel. So, the opposite side of this blue would be kind of like a orangish yellow. I don't know if I would definitely want to use that because I already have that in the hair. So yeah, we'll keep the orange in the hair. Let's make it more like a goldish yellow for some of her some of these like stripes and kind of like jewelry like elements here. No, I'm not there. Do this one. Okay, we need to give some color in there too. I'm doing a separate layer for each color. You'll end up with a lot of layers, but it's easier, especially if you're working in like a pipeline where you have other people that are checking your work, because if they check your work and they say like, oh, I really like this, but I wish that color was actually yellow, you know, and you're gonna want to change that color without having to kind of like pick it out of one layer. If it's all in one specific layer, you could just pick that layer and change the color right away. Otherwise, you kind of have to dig through stuff. Okay, so here's a kind of, this is where it gets a little tricky because the fill tool, well, I mean, I guess it works all right. I was gonna say the fill tool might not have been able to get into these small cracks, but it seems to be doing okay. But yeah, Mike, Japanese really isn't that daunting. I mean, I would say that it takes a degree of dedication and maybe more than dedication, maybe it takes a degree of like love and like appreciation or for the medium or the language. Because if for example, if your goal was simply to come to visit Japan, um, you probably would only need to know very basic Japanese, like well, learning how to read is very helpful, at least especially kana, the katakana. That's the katakana is the lettering that they use for non-Japanese words. So if you go to like a restaurant and you want to order, I don't know, like a hot dog, it's not gonna say hot dog in English. It's gonna say it in kana. So it'd be like a hotodogu. So just being able to read that, you'll already be able to see in the menu, and just reading hotodogu, you could probably guess like, oh, that's a hot dog, and you could order. Although that's probably not the best example because in Japan, almost every restaurant has pictures in their menu, so you could probably just point at it and without even being having to read it. But you know, like signs of restaurant names or things. I'm sure there's a lot of examples of things where you'd want to be able to read. So as long as you can read katakana and those are your basic sentences, like I want this, like kode o kudasai, or I don't know, where is the bus station, like, you know, bus stay wa doko desu ka, or something like that. Like you could live pretty or you could visit Japan without too much of an issue. People here are very helpful. They're very eager to help anyone who is from out of town or anything to like get around and whatnot. And so if you want to become a master of if you want to actually like become fluent in the language, it's not necessarily a matter of your, what's the word? It's not a matter of necessity, I guess is what I'm saying. It has to be a matter of you just loving the language and wanting to learn it. Okay, where's the I want to add some more yellow down here. Okay. All right, so what's saying? That kana game sounds like a clever way to link the sounds with the symbols. Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. I hope it will. I will have to think of some other way to introduce them, because that game kind of assumes that you have a way to reference what it is, and so maybe I'll have like at the beginning of the game, or maybe it'll be like a pause button that you can press at certain times to to review what equals what, and then when you unpause it, you have to do it in real time or something. So there will have to be a place where I introduce you to the kana and say this kana equals this sound or that or whatnot. But the more that you do it, I think it would work out. And after I finish the kana, the next thing I'd eventually like to do is kanji, and I really want to do kanji because I don't know what color to make this. Let's change this because when I was studying kanji, I don't know. Kanji is the Chinese characters, by the way, in case anyone didn't know. There's like 2,000 of them, and that sounds like a lot, and yeah, it really is a lot. And but the thing is that a lot of the programs I used to learn, or when I was looking for programs to learn, a lot of the ways that they approached it is they would say, give me 1 second, I have to figure out what I'm doing with the next color real quick. Let's do her boots. There we go. That color work. So like it will be like flashcards, right? And it will have a Chinese character, and on the one side of the flashcard it would have the Chinese character, and on the back side of the flashcard it will have all the different readings of that character. So you may not be aware, but a Chinese character, when you're reading it in Japanese, it's at least going to have 2 readings. It's going to have the I think it's the onyomi and kunyomi. It's the Japanese reading and the Chinese reading. I know the Chinese reading is still a Japanese adaptation of the Chinese reading, but so let's see if I can think of an example. Like what's a kanji that's pretty simple to know? Yama, maybe. I think. Yeah. So like this is the Chinese character for mountain, right? And the Japanese reading for that would be Yama. And the Chinese, I could be wrong about this, but I'm pretty sure that I'm right. The Chinese is san. It could be the opposite way. It could be I'm pretty sure that the Chinese is san and the Japanese is Yama. So there's already 2 ways to read that, right? So that one flashcard would have two different things that you have to answer. So you flash to that card and you have to say Yama, and then you have to say San. And that's still doable, but then you might have another case where you have something like, now this is probably the worst case. So it's not like every word is like this, but the absolute worst possibility is you'll have something like, can I write here? Yeah, okay. This is the kanji for down. It means and it's, here. Sorry. Okay. So that's the kanji for down. And this has, once again, it has the Chinese and the Japanese reading, but it also has different readings depending on what word it's in. So so let's see here. There's if it's just like this, you would read it as sta. So sta means down, right? The Dante part of Japanese is that the characters were nothing I've ever encountered. Yeah, the characters are completely different. You're right about the kunyomi. Okay, thank you for that. Yeah. So what was I gonna say? So yeah, the characters are completely different, and Japanese itself is completely different. So that's why it'll be very daunting to learn from an English speaking background. But I would say that I think that Japanese is actually easier than English. Now this makes it seem strange, but what I mean is that if you were a non-English speaker trying to learn English, it would be harder to learn English, I would imagine, than it would be to learn Japanese, because Japanese is internally consistent. Like once you learn the rules work probably 90% of the time. Whereas in English, every rule you learn, it will work maybe 60 to 40%, and then there'll be a different case where the rules change, basically because English is made of so many different languages. But back to the kanji example. So this have one reading as sta, which would mean down, right? And then you know the Japanese word kudasai. When you say kore o kudasai, when you're asking for something, you're essentially asking them to lower it to you, because it's a humble form. So when this is kudasai, I'm sorry, my writing is horrible. I very rarely actually write with my hand. I feel like I'm actually writing this wrong. Am I? I think I am. I think it's actually like that. Hold on a second. I don't actually write with my hand very often. I usually just write with the computer. Yeah, I had it backwards. Sorry about that. Here, I'll just write with this. That'd be easier. So, there we go. So, when it's with, where'd my letter go? Come on, layer, come back. Is this layer? Ah, there we go. This layer. Okay. So when it's kudasai, it's no longer shita. You actually read it as ku. I have a huge thing now. Okay, there we go. Ku. And if you're going down, you say oriru, so it actually becomes like o, like oriru. If you put like a riru at the end of it, that'd be oriru. And then if you, what else was there? Ku. Also, if it's ika, which means like below, like 2 or below, like below 3, you'd say like san ika. It means like 3 or below. That'd be ika. So now it has a ka reading, right? And then it also could be ge. I'm not gonna go through all of it. I'm just for just an example, like shita, ku, o, ka, ge. What else was there? Was there another one? I think there is. I think there's 7 altogether. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. What are the other ones? Ika, ge. I can't remember the other ones right now, but I don't want to spend too much time on that. So just for example, we have at least 5 different readings for this. So you'd get this flashcard, and on one side of the flashcard, it will have this kanji, and on the other side, you're supposed to, when you see that kanji in the flashcard, you're supposed to recite down. This means down, and it's read as shita, ku, o, ka, ge, and you have to like remember them all like that. And I just found that was a horrible way to remember the kanji. So the way that I actually started, I found that was a lot better to learn the kanji. Instead of making one flashcard with all this information, I would make one flashcard would be this, and it would say shita. All right, done. You know, next flashcard I would have this, and it will have my writing is terrible, but kudasai. And so that one will come up, and I would say, oh, that's kudasai. That means please give me. And the next flashcard would be like oriru, right? So now I know that this is oriru. I would say oriru, and this means to go down or to get off or something like that. And so right there, each flashcard, you have more flashcards. Like it increases the amount of flashcards you have, but it stops you from getting like stuck where you're just like on one card being like, there was shita, ku, oh, what was the other one? What was the other one? And, and it just completely destroys the flow. And also, you're remembering these sounds. Like I remember there's a o sound, but I don't know when to use the o sound. So when I have a flashcard like I have up here where it has oriru, now I not only know that this kanji makes the sound o, but I also know that it makes the sound o when it is written with riru, so that means oriru, and then I also know that means to get down. So it gives you a much more a lot better context to the kanji. So I didn't see any programs that did that. So when I make my program, that's how I'm gonna do it, where the kanji would come out like this as a word, not just the actual symbol, and then you would type that in, and I don't know. It'll be a few steps before we get there, but that's the sort of idea, I guess. Sorry, I keep going off on the kanji, on the Japanese tangent, but if you're interested in learning more about more Japanese stuff, I'll definitely talk about that. I mean, you can see that I do get pretty excited about it. So I have to fix that later. Okay. And that is one downside to having many layers, is that a lot of times you lose track of what layer you were on, but also I kind of miss at work. I actually use a gaming keyboard for my shortcuts and everything. A friend of mine kind of introduced me to that, and it's surprisingly good for art. I actually don't even use it for gaming. I use it for art specifically because which keyboard was it? I think it's the Nostradamus or something. It's like a Razer keyboard, and it has a scroll wheel on it. So your left hand, you have your WASD and your control shift and all that. So it's very quick to be able to do like the control shift space and all those other shortcuts. And then the scroll wheel, you can use that to change the size of your brush really quick. So I kind of miss using that because at home I don't have that, so I have to press the bracket keys to turn my brush size up and down, which isn't quite as fast. Okay. Now I feel feel like the clothing is gonna take a while because there's so many different layers to it. I made it a little too complex, so maybe I'll maybe fill in a little bit more, then I'll go in and start doing shading because or else it'd be kind of boring just watching me filling in colors the whole time. All right, so what color should we make this area? Um, let's do like a darker blue maybe. So Nick says, I like that idea for flashcards. I worked through the old Joyo kanji in a similar way since that's how one of my professors structures his quizzes. Yep, awesome. So did you study in school or did you study? Did you get most of your study on your own, or how did you do that? It's maybe about 20 kanji and 100 words using those kanji, which gives it more context than just trying to memorize the kunyomi and onyomi readings. I haven't kept up my studies at all though. Yeah, I think definitely you need the context because otherwise it's like you have this. Like I think I saw another person on YouTube where he was talking about he tried to learn the kanji, but then he used some sort of system where you like kind of memorize it through. I forgot how it worked, but there was like some kind of mnemonic device. But then he said that he memorized it, but then he didn't really know the context of how to use it. So I think context is pretty important. So I'm lowering the opacity of this layer so that later on if I do shading to her legs that this would be kind of like a sort of like nylon stocking type effect. I'm I'm not really super knowledgeable about women's fashion and clothing, so I could be completely wrong about how these things work. But you know. And I think there's a comment from Mike too. Your conjugation system is quite reliable. I appreciate you sidetracking the video. Cool. Hopefully we're not stepping on anyone's toes here. I don't think so. Um, I have to admit I am kind of worried sometimes about my channel because I have so many interests. Like I mentioned earlier, like the Japan stuff, the art stuff, the gaming stuff, and sometimes I wonder if there's people that are only coming to my channel for art and they're like getting pissed off every time I do a non-art video, or there's only people that only want to learn Japanese and they get upset when I talk about the art or or gaming or something. So that is something I kind of worry about sometimes. But I think ultimately I just have to do the videos that I feel what's the word, motivated and I don't know, passionate about making. I mean, I've been doing a video every week lately, and there's kind of that temptation to just do videos just for the heck of doing videos and not actually do things you want to do. But I've realized there's a lot. If I don't limit myself to one category, there's so much stuff that I am really interested in putting videos out. So I feel like rather than like limiting myself to one category and then like putting out videos even when I don't really feel like it's something I'm that really into, I think it's better to kind of just to just do what I feel passionate about for each video. Like if I feel like I want to make a video about this, then I'll just make it, and not worry too much about all the ins and out of that. Okay, usually I probably put more detail into this, but I think I'm just gonna make these all yellow because I'm spending too much time on just the filling in colors. Where's that color? There we go. Okay, so I think that's pretty good. And usually, if I was doing this regularly, I would probably go through and do the same thing to like her arms and and then her face and everything. But I want to get to some more interesting stuff. So let's just start doing some shading. So gonna take this layer and let's actually shade her face. I think that'd probably be the most interesting thing to do at the moment. So let's skip ahead a little bit and leave the body as it is, because that's gonna be a lot of busy work probably, getting all the bodies, shading and everything ready. So we'll start with the very back layer with her hair. Add another layer on top of that, and once again you put a clipping mask. And when I select the color, well, there's a good way to show this. Actually, yeah, let's make a color layer so I can show you how I usually do this. When I'm doing something for work, because I want to be consistent, I usually make a separate layer and I mark it as red so that I know that that's something I'm going to delete at the end. And then I'll just go through each of the base colors. So like right now we have the color for hair. I'll select that and make like a little like bean, I guess, of that color. So Mike says, you do you, man. You are so dynamic. Awesome. Encouraging to hear that. So there we go. There we have that color. And then I'm going to make it a little bit darker, but just a little bit, and also a little bit more saturated at the same time. And I'll make another circle inside of that. So now I know that's my kind of like my darker color. Maybe I can make it even a little bit darker. And if you want, you could also change the color by moving it down the color wheel a little bit, so it's a little bit it's not the exact same hue. That looks pretty good. And now we'll do the same on the other side, where we'll actually go add more light and less saturation, and then move it up the color wheel, and that'll give me like a highlight color. And then I might just do one more darker color for like extra dark area. And let's actually make that even more, push that more toward red. Okay, that's pretty good. So now I could go back to my hair layer, and I have a kind of guide of that. These are the colors I want to use. So first thing, I'm going to make a gradation. And I'm going to make that should I make the darker color? Yeah, let's make that the darkest color. No, let's make it the regular shade color. So for gradations, I usually just, you're generally going to have the lighter colors on the top, so I have the dark on the bottom, and then I use the watercolor brush in Clip Studio to just kind of blend that up like this. You could also use just the gradation tool if you want a more, a more uniform color, but I like to be a little bit more in control of where it's dark and where it's light. So there you go, that works. That's nice little gradation. All right, so Nick says he studies in university, but now after graduation, I want to get into serious self-study. I'm also kind of considering going to Japan sometime for a short-term language course. Yeah, definitely. I noticed that when I came to Japan, I took an advanced course here, which is very helpful, but probably most of my my improvement with the language was through self-study. So I think a lot of it is your own self-discipline. I mean, it depends on each person, though. Some people, they need sort of like a classroom setting to keep themselves motivated. But if you could do your own self-study, that helps a lot too. And the book that I recommend the most, if you just want a straight like beefy grammar book, it was I think it's Japanese. Let me check the name of the book real quick. Okay, it's just this big, thick yellow book called A Dictionary of Basic Japanese Grammar, and there's another one, and there's a blue one that's called A Dictionary of Intermediate Japanese Grammar, and it's just straight up. There's a grammar example, and then it just explains how it works, and it gives you examples of it. So it's not like a workbook type of thing. It's just very straight to the point. And I just went through that from beginning to end. And then once I had the basic grammar, then I just read a bunch of manga, and it's surprisingly how helpful that is, because you have anime, which is generally based on manga, so you could watch a manga. I mean, you could read a manga and then watch the anime, and you already kind of prepped yourself for the anime by reading the manga. So it is pretty good. Although you'd have to be careful what you pick, because some manga are going to be more are going to be less fruitful than others. Like some are going to really give you a good impression of words that are used in everyday conversation, while other ones are going to just be like kind of really out there and not helpful in your regular Japanese life. Also, Japanese dramas are pretty good too. Although I've been finding lately, I'm trying to watch Japanese dramas, and it seems like half of them have like this like super overacting. I don't know how to describe it, but it's like they don't talk like normal. They talk like anime characters, which it works in anime, But when it's a live action thing, sometimes it's just like, can't you just talk like normal? I don't know. But there are some good dramas that I like. One that I watched recently, which I enjoyed quite a bit, was Keikon Dekinai Otoko. I think it was called Keikon Dekinai Otoko. Like the guy who can't get married, basically, or a guy that's not made to be married. It's like this. He's this architect, and he's like super into his own like craft and everything, and he doesn't really he's not really interested in marriage and everything. But then of course, as these dramas go, there's like love interests and things that pop up and whatnot. But the first drama I watched when I was studying Japanese was Densha Otoko, and I haven't watched it recently, but back then I found it pretty entertaining. All right, so now I'm gonna add some what you calls them shadows. This might be too dark of a color, but we'll fix that later. Actually, I'm just gonna having trouble figuring out where I want the shadow to lie, so I'm just gonna make the whole thing dark and then actually do the opposite thing where I delete the areas that I don't want the shadow to be. That may be a little bit easier. Yeah, actually, I think I like that better. Okay, that works more or less. I don't want to put too much detail in the background of her hair. I do want to have a little bit up here, though. Those grammar dictionaries are nice. I may have had one, but I left it in the States. I've definitely looked through one of them before, though. Yeah, I do like them. And once again, that depends on if you're like a grammar nut or not. Like, if I know there's a lot of people that aren't really big on grammar, and those books may be a little intimidating, but and for them maybe like the more workbook type of approach is good. But if you want a really beefy study session, those definitely are good for that. Although I imagine there's probably a lot of tools now that weren't around when I was learning, because I was learning before, like it was the internet was around, but it was nowhere near as robust as it is now. So because I remember when I first came to Japan, I had a, a what you call it, a map that was like it was a paper map basically that I carried with me everywhere to get around Japan. Like it was before the GPSs and the smartphones and everything. And now like no one has to deal with that anymore. Now they just come here and they just link up to their smartphone and they know exactly where they are, which is helpful. But at the same time, it was a really good learning experience to have to get around a city with a paper map, because you just figuring out where you are right at the moment is a test in itself. And then in above figuring out where you are to then figure out how to get to where you want to go, then that's another test. And you know that was a fun adventure all the time. I would just kind of venture out into some random direction and get lost and then try to get home after that. Kind of miss those days. Once you get a job and everything and situated, it's like every day you just kind of go to the same place and come back home, and then you're too tired to go out after that. I did go rice planting the other day. That was kind of interesting though. Um, where you actually went to like this muddy field, and you you take your shoes off and you get down there in the mud, and then you plant the rice seeds into the mud, and in like very nice little rows. I went with my wife and her mother and her sister's family, and it was mostly for the kids, I think. But the kids, they got bored in like maybe 10 minutes, and then they went off and they started just catching frogs and stuff. While me and my mother-in-law and my wife also for the most part, stayed there just working on the rice fields all afternoon. Alright. I may come back to fix that up later, but for now that's good. So let's go to the front hair, and then we'll go to the face after that. Imagine the face is where this is going to be a little bit more interesting. Yeah, art actually, when you watch YouTube videos and they're all kind of sped up and everything, it seems really exciting. But when you're actually doing the art yourself, it's a lot of just I don't know, dead time of going through layer by layer doing the same thing. I love it as a career though, especially, and I don't think every studio is going to be like this, but at least in the two places I've worked at so far, they've been pretty cool with allowing me to just kind of listen to YouTube or podcasts or like what's the word? I forgot to put the gradation on this. Hold on. Or even sometimes I could like play. I could have Netflix or something going in the background, and as long as it's a movie or a drama that you don't actually have to physically watch to know what's going on, a lot of times you can just have it playing in the background and just look up every once in a while if there's like some big scene where someone's gonna die or something, and then it keeps you pretty focused. It's surprisingly, it keeps you focused on your art, because when I notice that, this is for me personally, if I don't have anything on in the background, you really feel the time. You feel like you could work for maybe, I don't know, like 20 minutes, and you feel like you've been working for like 2 hours, and you're just like, oh, I need a break, I'm tired, you know. But if you have like a really interesting drama, like recently, what was I watching? I was watching Mr. Robot on Amazon Prime, and like I think it was like 3 or 4 seasons, I can't remember, but like I just had that playing on the background the whole time while I was working, and I could work for like the whole day, like 6 hours straight, without even like getting up from my desk, which probably isn't a good thing. So I'm not saying that's a good thing per se, but I mean that you just keep completely lose track of time because you're being entertained, and you're also like you're doing the art, and it's kind of like this unwritten agreement that I have with myself, I guess, that as long as my hand is moving on the art page, it's fine for me to have a drama going on. So if I stop working and I just watch the drama, of course that's bad. But as long as my hand keeps moving, it's okay. So like it really helps me feel like a lot. So like, for example, maybe you feel like you want a break, right? And if you don't have anything anything going on in the background, you might think right away like, okay, it's time for a break. But if say you're in the middle of an episode of the drama, and it's like there's like, I don't know, like 20 minutes left or 30 minutes left, you might feel like you need a break, but then you're like, oh, but there's 30 minutes left of the drama. Okay, I'll just draw for another 30 minutes until this is over, right? And you'll think like, oh, that'll be my break after that. But then maybe that time actually passes, and then you start the next episode without thinking about it, and then you're like, oh, I forgot about my break. Oh well, I'll just watch the end of this episode. And then that's sort of how it kind of works, where it strangely keeps you working longer and more motivated to keep going. All right. Now that's just me personally. I mean, other people may have different experiences. Your mileage may vary, as they say. Okay. I haven't quite decided whether I want this to be. I think originally I was thinking I was gonna do like a cell shading, but I feel like I'm probably gonna do more like a Atsunuri. That's what they call it when it's like when there's more gradation and what do you call it? Variation in line in hue. And actually at work I haven't been drawing anything like this recently. I did a video before where I was talking about the unescapable like moe style in Japan, but lately I actually have escaped the moe style. I don't really draw like these types of characters anymore. It's kind of good to draw it every once in a while, just to kind of keep my that muscle stretched. But lately, I've been doing more like background work and like making elements of the game that are not character based, which I enjoy quite a bit. And I'll probably do a video about that in the future and what other types of things there are to do. Because when I was first looking for work in Japan, it seemed like character art was basically all that people were looking for, or all that people wanted to do. But it seems like there are actually a lot of other ways you can market yourself as an artist in Japan, and it may actually even be more effective because everybody wants to do character art. So if you're just trying to market yourself as a character artist, you have a lot of competition. But if you can like develop other skills that not as many people can do, then you're gonna be more valuable to your company. Oh, so I think we got some more comments. What do you think about systematically introducing students to kanji radicals relatively early on? So let's see your radicals. I don't know. I'm thinking about it, but because that's part of the system that I was mentioning. Some other guy did on his YouTube channel where he was using radicals. I don't know if radicals are really that important in my opinion. I mean, that may not be a very a good thing to say, but and let me make sure I get this right. By radicals, I'm assuming you mean like when you have like something like this, and this is one radical, and then this is another radical. Is that the right? Is that what you mean by radical? I'm not. It's been a while since I've like looked at a study book, so I don't remember exactly what it's called. But if I am right about that, I found it is kind of helpful as mnemonic. What do you call it? Memory devices, mnemonic devices. I forgot how you pronounce it. But once you really get into like learning all 2,000 of the kanji, it's just like there's just so many kanji to learn that having to like break them down by radicals, it would be helpful if you're doing a hand drawing. So if you're having to write them by yourself so that you remember how to write them. But I mean, this is kind of an honest truth is that I can hardly write any kanji. I've lived in Japan for 13 years or so, and there was a time where writing kanji was extremely important, but now with the internet and like how you're talking when you talk to people through apps on your phone and everything, you really you really hardly ever write with your hand. I mean, if you could just remember how to write your address, that's about all you need to really know how to write. And so, since I don't have to write with my hand, I don't have to actually memorize exactly what radicals compose which kanji, which means that as long as I could recognize the kanji in context, and that goes back to the whole thing about context being extremely important, is that like in English, you know how they've done tests where you can actually drop like every other letter, and people can still read a sentence because they could just see the context and they know what to expect. It's kind of the same thing with kanji, is that even if one radical is off, if you know that kanji wouldn't appear in that context. So when you're reading a sentence, you just kind of recognize it from this is a sentence where that word would come up, and it's not as important to be able to write it stroke by stroke. Now, if you want to be perfect, then yeah, definitely you should go that route. But as a kind of quicker route, if you just want to be functional and in the language, I don't think it's the most important skill to have per se, or the most important area to focus on per se. I think there were a couple more questions. All right, so that was radical. Good. Um, what do you? As I advanced, I found and others could sometimes guess onyomi readings of kanji compounds with experience due to the radicals. Oh yeah, that is true. That is a good point about the radicals. Yeah, you can kind of guess it sometimes, and I do that sometimes too. I guess I just do it kind of intuitively now because I don't really think about it as like, oh, that's the radical, so that means that it's this. And I think systematically, if you can do that, that probably would be helpful. But for me, I think it's just that through experience of seeing the kanji so often and using it in context so often, it starts to be just like, oh, well, that kind of looks like the kanji that I know that has a on reading, so I'm guessing this might have a on reading, you know. And I don't necessarily that's because it has the same radical. It might be because it has the same radical, but I'm not thinking about it as like, oh, this has the same radical, and that's why I think it looks like that kanji. It's just like I kind of just notice that it looks similar. It's like if you know someone and then you see someone else with like a similar face and you're like, oh, that face looks like this other person I know. It's kind of like that when you just kind of intuitively can see it. But I mean, that's just my own experience. If you can systematically kind of break it down through radicals, I could definitely see how that could be very helpful. It's just for me, it's like I wanted to do. How's the phrase go? I think it's like you do. You get 80% of the 80% of the proficiency through like 10% of the worker. I forgot how what the phrase was, but basically doing focusing on the parts that will give you the most efficiency first, and then that way you kind of speed up your process. It's not you're not looking, so you're not shooting for 100% per se in that case. You're shooting for like 90% proficiency or 80% proficiency, but then you're doing it in a much faster way by focusing on the most important elements of the language first, so that you're functional. And then later on, if you decide that you want to be perfect, then you can work on the other parts. Um, so I also found it easier to memorize kanji by recognizing different components. Sometimes it gives hints of the meaning as well. Yeah, definitely. And that's another thing I may have mentioned quickly was that at the beginning I think it is an easy way to remember them. Like the one I just wrote. I think the only reason why I could write that kanji I just wrote for Yasumi. Uh, um, I don't want to find the right letter, but I wrote it earlier where it was the combination of person and a tree. So you think of a person resting at a tree. So okay, yeah, that's Yasumi or whatever. But and so at the beginning that definitely was helpful to remember a lot of them. But I think once I started really getting into like all 2,000 of them, it was just there was too much. There was more kanji than I wanted to worry about. There was more kanji there to. There was so much kanji there that it made me feel like I would be slowing down my learning if I had to learn each part of each one. So I was just learning intuitively at that point. But at the beginning, if you can learn the actual separate parts, that I can definitely see how that can be helpful and be actually probably beneficial. Maybe even it will make you even more capable of the language than I am. And I think you said you're from Taiwan, I believe, Nick, which I would imagine gives you kind of a leg up on me. Like I had a friend from China here that was in my same manga school, and he was a lot better with the kanji than I was, because I think just the familiarity with it, like how Michael Richard was saying earlier, how everything was just so unfamiliar when he was seeing the it wasn't even kanji, it was just like hiragana. I think that's just so different than what we have, what we're used to. So your different background probably helps. All right, so let's give some highlights before we spend too much time stressing about this one part. So highlights. So this is what I usually do with highlights. That's a very quick way to get them done. So you could just kind of draw a band of light across her head like this. And usually I want the top of it to be a little bit the top of it to be more opaque, and then the bottom it's going to start to taper out and be less opaque, more translucent. That's the word I was looking for. Often see like in visual novel games and things, a lot of games will just stop it right there, where they just put the band and then they're done with it. I feel like the band just by itself isn't the band of light, that isn't quite enough for me. So after I have the band there, the next thing I like to do is to make a masking layer, and then I'm going to take away parts of it, like so. I think a lot of times I used to also just draw directly, instead of making a band. I would actually just draw the colors like part by part. Like I would do something like this and like this and like this, and then try to add a gradient to it. But I found it's easier just to do the whole thing at once, and then you just use the masking layer to take away parts you don't need. Hey, Sketchflix. Hey, good to see you, bro. Yep, I'm gonna try to stream once a week, hopefully now. Like we should try to get you guys to come on sometime. Like in case any of my viewers don't know, I've been doing what do you call them? what do you call them? Arcade. What's it called? Fighting game streams with Sketchflix and Nihongo Gamer on a semi regular basis. We do it like maybe once every other week, I suppose. And that's over at Nihongo Gamer's channel. I'm really not that good at fighting games, so my goal is to eventually try to like tempt these guys to come over to my channel. We'll play some PC games because I'm much more at home with PC games probably. Although I am liking the Skullgirls. We were playing Skullgirls last week, and I played that a little bit at work too. And this guy at my work, he was like really excited to see me because I that's another thing that's awesome about being working in the game industry. I could play video games on my lunch break, and no one like gives me crap about it. So I was like playing Skullgirls on my computer, and then like one of my coworkers came over, and he's a really good he's a really awesome artist, by the way, my coworker. But he was like, oh, it's Skullgirls. I love this game. I wanted to play this for so long. I was like, okay, let's play together. And so he was playing with me during lunchtime. But Skullgirls definitely that's a game I want to get like I might want to do like some fan art for that in the future. That's just like screaming for fan art. And Mike says, I pick up some phrases from time to time through Google Translate, and they are spelled with English characters. Roman. Yep, so Roman characters. I think they call it Romaji. The G is the way that they say character, so Romaji is Roman character. It is easy to remember using characters I already know. Yeah, definitely. You build off of what you know and kind of like go from there instead of going directly to something that are completely completely foreign. So, okay, so now we got that, and I'm gonna do another layer of the highlights as well because I want to get like the light coming from the side. Now, I don't know if I'm gonna be able to pull this off or not, but a lot of times what I like to try to do is you want to have a warm color coming from the left side, and then you want to get a colder color coming from the other side. So let's kind of change the color a little bit. Let's make it a little bit. Yeah, that's probably about right. It's gonna be basically the same color. I just warmed it up a little bit, and gonna give like an outline of that around here. I'm gonna have to go in and put this into the background as well too later. Maybe for these streams, it might be better if I work on things that don't have as many layers, because I'm noticing I'm spending a lot of time like organizing my layers, which probably isn't that interesting. Down here. So Sketchflix has also started was it Imager? I think you said it was an Imager site or an Imager page. So if you want to put the link for that, I'm sure people might be interested in seeing that. Or have you started? Yeah, I think you were getting ready to start. I don't think you've started it yet, but you were getting ready to start an Imager page, and you were gonna do like a comic, I believe, like a web comic of sorts. Instagram. There we go. See, I'm so out of the loop with all the other social networks. They all kind of just blend into my head as one entity. And then Mike says that he's gonna move on to the writing once he's got his feet wet. Yeah, I think that's a good way to go. Also, if you learn how to write it, particularly for the hiragana and katakana, if you practice writing it, it will help you read it as well. Though I think what I did, the way that I learned, the way that I figured out how to read hiragana and katakana, I tell other people about it, and they say it's kind of hardcore for them. So I don't know. Maybe this isn't like the most natural way to do it, but I basically learned how to read hiragana and katakana in maybe 2 weeks. And the way I did that was I just every day I had like a graph paper, and I wrote like let's see, I wrote like I need a layer that I can write on. There we go. So I wrote like a, I, U, E, O, and then I would put like this is 0, this is ka, and then S or whatever, and every day I would just go through this and be like, okay, ah is this or this, and then e is this or this, and then oo is um, this or this, and then like I would go through that, and if I didn't know one, I'd be like, oh, I don't know that one. I just write an X, and then I would go through, and then every day I would go through that, and then anything I didn't answer, anything that I didn't know or that I got wrong, I would just review that, and then the next day I would do it again, and I just kept doing that until I could fill in the whole graph without making mistakes, and that took about 2 weeks doing it once every day. It's a very brute memorization method, but it worked for me. All right, let's add highlights too. Well, okay, that's right. I was gonna try to add like a blue highlight, but you know what? Yeah, that's gonna take too much time. Let's go ahead and just make the highlights in the background, and then we'll get to her face. Don't want to be on too long today. And if you guys have any suggestions for future art streams, I think I'm gonna try to use it to kind of build up more of my personal work. So um, I may come up with some projects that I'll do on the stream. Although it takes a lot of time to get each one done. So, but yeah, if you have any other suggestions about like art you want to see, or like kind of techniques that you're curious about, or even like non-art stuff. So like I said, the channel it's about Japan art and gaming. So anything in the areas of Japan art or gaming, or anything in between. So just go ahead and let me know suggestions, and I'll try to include those in future streams or episodes of the YouTube channel. Ah, thanks. Sketchfix says that my illustration looks good. I'm glad to hear that. I also am envious of you for getting your pizza coming. I didn't order pizza today. I am a big pizza fan, though. And I got my wife hooked on Chicago-style pizza, because we went out for a wedding, I think, before we got married. She went to meet my parents, and I wish I would have had time to meet you, Mike, to see you, Mike, too, while I was there. But we were only there for, I think it was like 4 or 5 days, and we had my cousin was getting married and stuff, so we didn't really have a lot of time to do anything else. But maybe next time get in touch with me, man. I wanna hang out next time I get over there. And but I brought her. Well, my family got her some Chicago style pizza, and then we went out and we got another pizza too, which it was like a mom and pop shop, so it's not like the perfect Chicago style pizza. But we went to I think the most famous one was, like, I think it's called Dos. It's like Uno is the main Chicago style pizza restaurant downtown, and then I think their second branch is called Dos, I believe, or Deuce or something like that. And we ate there, and like ever since then, like my wife is like, oh, we need to go back to Chicago just for the pizza, because there's nothing like that in Japan. And there's actually a place right by our house that is it's said to be like it's got some kind of reward as being like the number one pizza place, or I really doubt that it's anything, like, because every other day someone tells me that this place is like is like world number one pizza or something, and it's like there can't be like 5 or 6 world number one pizza places in Japan. I just don't believe that. But for some reason, this place that they say it's the number one pizza place that's got some type of reward, and so we went to eat there like right after we got back from Chicago, and me and my wife were like, meh, it's all right, I guess. It was nothing like Chicago style pizza. All right, what layer am I on now? This is her. Okay, so that's her face layer. So I'm gonna move this up to. There we go. Move it up to this layer, and I'm going to select everything outside of that, and then reverse the selection so that it selects everything inside. And we're going to, where's my layer? There we go. And then we're going to fill that in. There we go. There, so we're getting closer to actually having a face drawn. And let's add. Okay, so I got a comment from Nick and Secret Sauce. So first of all, Nick says, are there any assets materials that people have uploaded for Clip Studio you found useful? Not, well, there could be. I honestly, I haven't actually looked into it. That's something I've always felt like I should look into. I think I just kind of have my, especially at work, I have like a fairly, defined deadline of when I have to get things done, so that I don't always have time to kind of just like check other things out. And also, I'm learning a lot of new things at the same time. Like I'm learning Z brush or Z brush, depending on whether you're what part of the world you're from. And What was I saying? Yeah. So and I'm also like learning Unity and programming and stuff like that. So I feel like I should look into the what other stuff is on Clip Studio, but I haven't looked at all. So if anyone has suggestions of things I should look at, please let me know. I imagine that a lot of the stuff with the what is it called? It's a lot of the stuff with the 3D models would be useful to like make a to have like a 3D model and put it into like the three-dimensional space to kind of save yourself time of sketching things out and getting poses and things like that. That could be quite useful, I imagine. As it is right now, I usually just go to like posemaniac.com or something and find a pose I like or do some sketches and take a pose that I drew before and repurpose it or something. But yeah, if you have suggestions, definitely. And Secret Sauce, I love your name, Secret Sauce. Have you do oh do you feel how do you feel about the Dojin industry as a whole, not just R18 side? Do you feel that it's good breeding ground? Oh, a good breeding ground for young artists. Yeah, I do. I actually I went to Design Fest recently, and I try to go to Comedia and some other conventions here. Um, Comic K is the most famous convention for doujinshi and just like kind of artists, independent artists in general. But I find that Comic K is just so crowded that it's hard to get myself to go there as often. And also the other thing is that Comic K is basically it's for doujinshi primarily. I would say it's for people who are making fan related work that's related to an already established IP, and that's just not something I do as much. I'm more interested in doing original things, but in terms of launching your career or launching your kind of like, I don't know if career is the right word, but like your popularity. If you do fan related stuff and things that are based on a already popular IP, you're automatically going to have more discoverability, and there's going to be more people interested in what you're doing right off the bat. Whereas if you're doing an original work, there's a long trek ahead to kind of get people on board with what you're doing. Um, but I mentioned I think I mentioned in my other video, or maybe I was just planning to mention it, I don't remember. But like the let me explain really quick what I'm doing with her face right now. I'm going to actually like add a lighter color in the middle of her face, just as like it's sort of like a highlight to kind of bring out bring your focus to her face, I suppose. I don't know if any of you played Skyrim, but there's a mod called face light, which people use sometimes to make their characters face always look lit up no matter what the surrounding lighting is, and it's sort of like that. It's just it seems to help bring that punch to the face that I didn't mean to say. I didn't mean to say punch to the face. Bring that extra oomph to the drawing to draw you to the character's face. But yeah, so what I was thinking to mention in the other video, or possibly already mentioned, was that the costs of the conventions here is really accessible. So when I went to them, when I displayed in them, or when I sold art in them, the Comic K and Comedia, they were like $40 to $50, I believe, as a fee to take part in. And Comic K, there's like a raffle to be able to show, so it's not for sure that you'll be able to show your art. Like you have to kind of like win the raffle first, but if you win, it's only like $40 to $50, I think. And then Comedia, I don't know if there wasn't a raffle when I was there. You just had to register on time, but it may have changed now. But like that is super accessible because by comparison, I went to Gen Con and we sold our old board game at a different company I was working at back in the day, and I think it was like, I can't remember exactly, but I think it was like $1,000 to like register and everything. And that's not even included. That's not the travel fee or anything. That's just to reserve our place at the convention. And I think that was even discounted because it was our first time. So if you can consider like an American like convention, I mean, of course Gen Con is a really big convention, but I mean, in terms of relative to Japan, I think that Comic K is also a big convention. Like if you're talking like 50, $40, and then you're talking $1,000, like that's a big difference in the price in barrier to entry. And so I've heard like podcasts with artists in America and other countries talking about how hard it is just to like break even when they go to these conventions, because they have to sell so much art. Like I think they said like the first 5 years or so, or like I don't know if it was five, it might have been less than that, but like they a lot of times you don't even expect yourself to break even. You just expect like you're just going there and you're losing money at the first couple of conventions, and then it's gonna take like a I think it was like 3 or 4 conventions before you actually start breaking even, so that you're making up for your the cost of you going to the convention. Whereas in Japan, since you're only paying like $40, $50, if you could just get a couple sales, you already covered your expenses of going to the convention. Um, the other down the flip side of that though is that in Japan the cost of printing stuff is pretty expensive. So I mean, you may want to like get your prints done in China, or like I think it was like there's like a I think there was like an American based company that has good relations with China too that I liked. I think it was like Panda or something. I don't remember, but um, so you probably don't want to do your printing directly in Japan because it's pretty expensive here, and so that you may suffer costs in that area. But so I sorry, I kind of lost track of what layer I was working on. So I'm adding some blush. And add some down here too. Oh, okay, cool. And just gonna add some blush color to where her mouth is. Oh, I feel like I might have had some more comments. All right. Oh, and I didn't mention about the R18 stuff. Like, I have no problem with that. I mean, it is kind of embarrassing when, like, if you're, like, I don't know, if you, well, I was gonna say it was embarrassing if, like, you're going with your girlfriend or something to a convention. There's, like, all these, like, very, like, R18 type stuff. But and I was going to say that, but then I realized that my wife actually has no problem with that. She's all like, oh, it's so cute or something. So, like, generally in Japan, people don't really have a lot of issues with that. Um, I know that there are some places outside of Japan where people kind of like are iffy about it, but I don't know. It doesn't seem to bother people too much over here. Um, Personally, I never. I always had an idea of like a R18 like a series that I would want to do event that I kind of I'm not gonna say want to do, but it was an idea like if I was going to do one that would be what I would do. Um, but I never actually did it because it would be too much. It would be too much work for just that one little experiment. And but apparently, manga artists here, if you do R18 manga, you actually get paid generally more than the people who don't do regular, and illustration as well, I believe. I did do one R18 illustration at my old company. We were doing like what do you call it, consignment work? I forgot what it's called, but like where another company hires your company to do illustration for them. It was an interesting experience. It was like, okay, well, I'll just learn how this is done. It's kind of interesting, I guess. But my idea for if I was gonna make one, it would be very different than what's popular. So that's another reason why I never actually did it, because like I think the kind of sense of what people like here and the sense of what I thought would be cool is kind of different. Like I was thinking like it would be cool to do like a RPG type theme where like you're going off in like this fantasy realm, and you're like I think I was gonna have like a couple of guys, like your standard like what do you call it, like coming of age movie where like there's these young guys that they just want to get laid or something, and they want to get a girlfriend or whatever it is, and they're trying to go to parties and stuff. And I was gonna do that, but have it like in a fantasy setting where like they're like going off and trying to find like a dryad or something, like some kind of mythical like elven girl or something. I don't know, but looking at what's popular in Japan, I don't think that's really necessary. I don't know. Maybe people have liked it. I don't know, but it would have been. It's just manga and comics in general take a lot of work, and with all the other stuff on my plate, it was never gonna actually come to fruition. I don't think. So Secret Sauce says sorry for my terrible spelling. Oh, no problem. It's my terrible reading abilities, because your comments are actually on a separate screen, so like I'm kind of looking from a distance, so it was a little bit hard for me to read. That's probably more on my end, I think. Design Festa is more fun. Yeah, Design Fest is really awesome. I need to change my job. What job would you change to if you were? Um, Design Fest is a lot of fun, but I mentioned briefly my experience when I was actually displaying it at Design Fest is that it was a lot of fun and I met a lot of really cool people, but I hardly sold anything at Design Fest because I think when you're at Comedia or like Comic K, like people are there for comics and for art, whereas Design Fest, like I don't know, people are there for anything. Design Fest, anything is there. Like there's like leather work. There's like masks. There's like wooden like swords and like it's like anything can be sold there. So your audience isn't as fine tuned, I guess. But it in terms of just fun, it is a lot more fun. It also is a little bit more expensive. I think when I went there, it was like a hundred. It was like $100 or so. Can't remember. Maybe like 120, possibly more because I remember that when I went, I was expecting that I would just pay my entrance fee and then I would go and I would have like a little like table to display at. But then I went there and there was nothing there. It was just like a square. They had a tape on the ground that was like put in a square. Like this is your area, and there was nothing there. And I was like, oh crap! There's no table. There's no chair. There's no anything. And I had to like ask people if I could borrow tables and chairs and get set up. So I believe that regularly you have to order all that separately, which is I think more standard in other conventions. But in Comic and Comedia, they give you a table with a chair at least with the $40 entrance fee, and it could be more expensive now. It was just $40 when I was there. All right, I could do more shading into her in her face. I think we can do some highlights, and then I'm gonna move on to her eyes, and then I probably will end the stream at say 2 o'clock. So maybe another 30 minutes. Well, 2 o'clock for me. I don't know what time it is over there or wherever you're watching from. So maybe about another 30 minutes, and then I'll save this and maybe continue next week or do a different illustration next week. We'll see. Okay, so I've always found the doujin industry neat. There are tons of artists that become industry pros, but there are tons of artists that fall off after a specific era, which blows my mind because you'll try to find more information about them, but they're too obscure and stuck wondering. Yeah, the wondering what the hell happened to them. That may be related to something else I ran into when I was going to those conventions is I noticed that a lot of the people. So I think from my background as an American, and I think a lot of like Westerners in general, when you're doing art and you're going to conventions, you have a very kind of professional mindset about it, like that this is your profession and you're going to or that you mean to turn this into your profession at least, and so you're very like you're kind of semi-professional, I guess. And but I found that when I was talking to people that were like displaying with me, like the other people in their booths, it seems that in Japan, and it may be changing, but for the most part, it's still seen as like a hobby. So it's like this is something that they're doing while they're in school. Like maybe they're part of like a circle or some type of group that's doing it, or maybe it's just something that they just kind of want to do on the side. But they're not. They didn't seem to be particularly serious about it. Like I would kind of talk about how do you what's your plans for the future? Like how do you see this progressing? And they just be like, oh, I don't know. It's I don't think it's like this obviously isn't going to be my profession. And I'm like, obviously? Why is it obviously not going to be your profession? You know, I can understand you're saying like I'm not sure if this will actually be my professional in the end, but to say obviously, like it seemed like you're not even trying at that point. And that's not everyone. That's just some people I ran into. But I'm wondering if maybe that might be part of why they're like you might find people that are they kind of do it while they're in school or while they're younger, but then once they do their shushoku. That's what's that, like the job hunting where they look for a career and they find like whatever company they sign up for, and then they might be like, oh well, I guess I'm done with that. I guess I'm done with that, and then they might just disappear possibly. This is all conjecture, but just guessing that may have something to do with it to some extent. I may change the color for eyes later. For right now, just getting it on there, and then later on I can always change it since it's in a separate layer. That color was not quite good enough. Let's try. brightening that up. There we go. That's good. Okay. Nandayo. That's a great name. Nandayo. So Nandayo says, do you have any advice for how to improve in drawing anatomy? Love your video, by the way. Well, thank you. So anatomy, I mean, it's kind of generic advice, but Proko's videos, I believe it's Proko. He's great for anatomy. He explains it very well. And then the other thing besides that is PoseManiac, PoseManiac.com, where they give you it gives you like a random pose every 30 seconds, or depending on the set, you can set it however you want, like every minute or 2 minutes or something. And then, like, let's see if I could bring it up real quick, what I used to do. 1 second. Dropbox. Sketch. Study? No, not study. No, not study. Dang it. See, this is what happens when you do all your work in an office, and then you get home and you want to actually do stuff. You don't know where anything is anymore. Do I not have? Maybe it's in my roughs. Let's see. Nope. Okay. Ah, there we go. Dailies. There we go. Okay. So, what's a good example? All right. See if I can bring this up. So we're going to add another window capture. We're going to call this dailies. Window capture doesn't work. All right, so it's not window capture. I guess it's something else. 1 second. So add Gazo. Yeah, that'll work. Okay, 1 second. Sorry for my lack of organization. I will hopefully be more organized in the future once I get a little bit more experience with using OBS. All right, here we go. Okay, so that should come up. So yeah, this is like some example of what I used to do. Every other day, I would just turn on PoseManiac.com and see if I can get my arrow. There we go. So I would go on to PoseManiac.com, and it would give you a pose every 30 seconds or so. So I would like draw that pose for like 30 seconds, and then it switches to the next pose, then draw that for another 30 seconds, and then draw until maybe like a half hour or so, basically, until you have like a page full of these like body sketches. And then usually I would go back to, if there was a particular pose I liked, like in this case I liked this pose here, so I took that, I made it bigger, and then I just spent a little bit more time kind of like fixing up the edges and stuff. And then I also took another 10 minutes or so practicing like a face, where I took this and then I colored that in or whatever. So yeah, I mean, that's doing just practicing like that, I think is a good way to go about improving. Okay, and now let's see if I can finish up this face in the next 20 minutes. Well, you can, I think. So Nandayo says he wishes he could draw like that. You know, it's all about practice. You just have to build it up over time. And especially with the anatomy, man. Like the first time I tried in anatomy, it's kind of crazy. Like it really is like a muscle. Like I don't know if you ever like had if you've done like push-ups when you were in high school or whatnot. You probably used to be able to do like, well, at least for me, I'd be able to do like 30 or 40, no problem. But now if I don't do them for a long time, I'll be like, okay, I'm gonna start doing push-ups every day, and then like I'll do like 5, and I'm like, oh, it hurts so much, you know, or like then I have to work up, and maybe in like 2 weeks I'll be able to do 30 again, or maybe 20 or whatever. And then I would stop for a few weeks, and I'd try again, and all of a sudden I'm back at 10, you know. And that's sort of what the anatomy is like too. It seems like when I was doing those practices every day, like the first day it would be really hard to draw, and then like maybe after about a week or so it would just kind of like flow out of my hand, and it's not even thinking. It's just like, oh, it's just working. It's so great. And then I would feel like, okay, I got this, and I'd take a month off, and then I come back like from vacation. It's like I can't draw again. It's not working anymore. You know. So I think it is really like a muscle that you just have to train. All right, so let's get that gradation a little bit. All right, then we're going to add a very light color, maybe something like this. No, don't like that. Yeah, that works more or less. Yeah, I don't know if I like that color, but we'll stick with it for now. Okay, that looks pretty good. And now highlights. Highlights. Everybody loves highlights. That's when the soul emerges. At least that's how it feels. Because you're looking at it and it just looks like these dead eyes, and then once you put the highlights in, it helps a lot. Alright, so Secret Sauce says, neat point for the Dojin topic. I've seen it enough to know that some end up doing drawings that are made into figures or are doing illustrations in a drastically different style for some boring anime game. Yep, like they get absorbed into the machine, you know. I sort of like I could almost even say for myself too. I some of my long-term viewers have probably noticed that the amount of like drawings I've been doing in my channel has gone down a lot since I started working professionally, because you get kind of stuck in the machine, and you can't, and especially Japan is not particularly oh, they're usually not that great about allowing you to work on things on the side a lot of times. So sometimes like they'll be very defensive about you putting stuff out, or like even like doing your own thing on the side. Luckily, my company right now, they're pretty cool about me doing other things. Like at first, I was kind of nervous about having my YouTube channel while I was working there, but they seem to be okay with it. So okay, I think that works more or less. I'm not sure if I'm completely happy with the placement of those highlights, because for some reason in the outline I made a really big highlight in the lower left of her eye, but that makes it sound like that makes it seem like there's a really big light coming from below her. But I mean, we'll figure that out later if I really want to change that. Okay, let's go back to a little bit more shading for her face, and then we'll call it a day probably. Where were we? Okay, there we go. All right, so how should we shade this? Yeah, the shading is always tricky, because my more traditional art experience wants me to shade a lot, but if you look at a lot of like anime and like manga stuff, they kind of keep it more, they tend not to put too much shading, because you don't want to you don't want to distract from the you don't want it to look you don't want her skin to look grummy or anything, so you don't want to put too much. And also the way that this usually I would have like underneath her nose I would have something like this, right? But I think the way that I had this outline, this line art, it seems like that little triangle there is probably more than enough. So you know what? Yeah, we'll keep that as it is. And instead of doing shading, let's do highlights for her skin. So like, for example, like a little highlight in the mouth there. Yeah, that's better. Okay. Now, I don't know why, but highlighting the cheeks like this tends to kind of look kind of good. Yeah, I think that's more or less good enough. I think what I would do is I would probably go to the I would what's the word? I would draw the rest of her. I would do the shading for the rest of her body and everything, and then come back to kind of fix up anything that I think that the uh, face is lacking. But for now, I think that's enough so that we can move on. Um, Last thing is just inside her mouth here. Should we put teeth? Teeth is another thing that's kind of weird because you could really they could look good or they could like really just make them look awkward. So I don't know. Let's see how that. Yeah, that's probably enough. Just a little bit of teeth at the bottom there. That looks pretty good. Okay, so I think I'm happy with that for the most part. Okay. So I said 2 o'clock, but it's 45. So we'll give it another 10 minutes. Let's see. Let me check the comments if there's any other topics. Let's see here. I had no clue rules like that existed for company artists. Yeah, they do it from place, especially in Japanese companies. Like some of them are kind of iffy about you making money outside of the company doing a similar thing to what you're doing inside the company. Um, like my wife's work apparently like she has some issues where like if she does similar type of things outside the company to what she does inside the company, it could cause her problems. And the thing I was worried about with my company was that I actually do a channel with I do a channel where hold on a second. Is this layer right? Yeah. So why is that not coming? Oh, I have to put it on the top. There you go. Okay, I was trying to put the whites over eye. So I have a channel where I speak in Japanese and I criticize a number of games. Like I had this one like rant where I was um, complaining about I forgot what game it was, but it was some Japanese game, and I was like, if I have this and like they know that I'm from a Japanese company, that might reflect badly on that company. So I was kind of worried about that. So that might be an iffy area I have to kind of be weary about. But I don't know, when I talk to them, they say as long as you don't make too much of a point of like saying like that your YouTube channel is like the official channel of our company or anything like that, it should be okay. So luckily that seems to be all right. Um, and then so Michael Richards says talent is a skill acquired. I get annoyed when people tell me I'm so lucky. Yeah, I hear you 100%. I'm so lucky that I can play music. I worked on that endlessly. I totally relate to you. Like I hate it when like people are like, "Oh, you're so lucky," and it's like, you know, if it was just luck, I wouldn't. I don't know how do you say it. Like when they say you're lucky, it's kind of sounds like they're saying like that I didn't have anything to do with it. You know, like it just was like something that just happened. When really like I'm putting in like hours every day or into that skill. You know, and like just learning discipline and like there's like so many like I think a lot of artists can relate. I mean, of course, there are artists that are kind of like just a genius, like what do you call it, like idiot savant types who just like are automatically super great without actually trying. But I think for the majority of us, we have to actually let me keep that and just fill in this color. So, yeah, there we go. Okay. But for the majority of us, it's a long process of learning and improving ourselves and disciplining yourself. And there's a lot of times where maybe you want to just go out and go to that party on the weekend, or you want to just I don't know like stay at home and like binge watch Netflix or play that MMORPG all day and not worry about anything else. But as an artist or someone who's building a craft or a skill, you always have that in the back of your head. Like, yeah, I love playing video games. I love doing this or that, but I still have to put that time aside and have the discipline to know that this is time for me now to work on my skill, or this is my time for me to work on this. And that's something you do your whole life. And then for someone to just say like, "Oh, you're lucky," it's like, well, I mean, I agree that there are probably a luck of the draw in a way of like the way that the dice land when you're born of what skills you have or don't have, but it's not just a matter of you just having it. There's an actual conscious choice that you're taking every day um, to take care of that skill. And so when you see someone else who's really good at something, I think it's good to um, it's good to feel like, oh, I wish I could be like that. I wish I could draw like that. But then what you do next, instead of saying like that, instead of saying something like that's great that they can do that, but I can never do that. That's where you're wrong, because you can if you just put the effort in, and if you have the same passion and drive. Hopefully that's not too oversimplified. I feel like I might be oversimplifying things a little bit, but hopefully you get the gist of what I'm trying to say. Okay, I am going to go back to the back of her hair to make that a little bit darker now. All right. On shading, I personally like flat colors with graphic shapes or super rough paintings with no line for a cool silhouette and sharp dynamic shapes. Yeah, I could definitely see what you mean. I think I, before I started working in a company, I liked what I called like chaos to order type paintings, where it's this chaotic mess of like these like rough painterly elements that somehow come together into a very beautiful piece in the middle. That's why I called it chaos to order. Like that was one of my favorite things. Um, and then when you say flat colors, I'm assuming you mean like cell shading. I like shell shading as well. It's just a little bit. I find that I have a little bit more trouble. How do I say? When you're cell shade, I feel like you have to kind of plan a little bit more about where you're putting down each stroke, and for me, I find it a little bit quicker to be able to mess with it. Like how do I say this? Like for example, with the shading in the background for hair, if I was doing a shell shading, I'd have to really think about where I want each color to lie. Let me grab this color again. So like I'd have to think about where I want that edge to be. Like I want the edge to be right here, and and I'd have to like kind of really work that out to be very specific about it. Whereas when you're not cell shading, you can kind of mess with it and just kind of play around and play around with it and see what looks right. But I mean, they both have their place, and I've had to do both. In Japan, I think they prefer cell shading for the most part. And also, I think that my style has kind of developed a combination of all of them, because when before I came to Japan, I used to do more like painterly type shading, where like say I would have this layer down, and then on the same layer I would take another color and I would start like kind of blending that color into there, and then kind of like grab another color and put that on top of that, and just keep going like color on top of color and like blending it all together. But I found that I really like the kind of orderly fashion that a lot of Japanese illustrations are done, where they have one color is on one layer, so that I have, like for example with her hair, I didn't put the highlights on top of I didn't put the highlights on the same layer as the main color, so that way later on if I decide that I want to have different highlights, I can add different highlights, and I could change it how I want on the fly. All right, and Nick says, awesome stream, man. Lots of interesting insights. Thank you. Well, my pleasure. And definitely let me know if you have any other thoughts or insights or ideas of what you want to see in the future. I think this is probably a good stopping point. I mean, there's other things I could do. I could try to add different, like a reflective light, or like have a cool light coming from a different angle or something. But for now, I think this is a good stopping point for today's stream. I'll try to think of if I wanted to continue this particular drawing or do a different drawing for next week. I'm also thinking that probably once a month, I may call it like game of the month. I'm not sure, but once a month I might do a gaming stream. So it'll be three weeks will be art stream, and then probably the last week of the month will be a gaming stream. And maybe at that timing I could get like Netflix, or not Netflix, Sketchflix, and like some other people to come on, and we could play together, or I'll just play by myself and have you all join me on the stream. We'll figure it out. But that's all for this week. Till next time, Yoroshiku.